Welcome to the presentation on Situations or Behaviors of Concern, a breakdown of Standards 30 to 32. To begin, service providers must have processes in place that address both unanticipated and anticipated situations or behaviors of concern. These are separate topics, and the policy and procedures, staff training, and documentation is different. When speaking about unanticipated situations or behaviors of concern, these are unpredictable and unexpected and not an identified behavior as it has not happened before. In addition, with unanticipated situations or behaviors of concern, a formal plan is not yet in place for this type of behavior. As individuals age, behaviors may become unpredictable and new behaviors may emerge. Even if staff work with an individual who doesn't have any tendencies towards unpredictable behavior, it is important that staff be familiar with approaches for unanticipated behaviors. Processes need to be put into place to protect individuals and staff. Staff need to know what to do in the event that these types of behaviors develop. I am going to take a few minutes now to walk you through the CET requirements for unanticipated situations or behaviors of concern. For the purpose of CET, approaches are the processes for unanticipated situations or behaviors of concern. They can be positive or restrictive in nature. They may be the same or similar to the processes used in planned positive or planned restrictive procedures. Ensure when a service provider's policy states that they do not endorse restrictive procedures as formal plans, that their policy needs to look at acceptable positive and restrictive approaches that are permitted if an unanticipated situation occurs. Anytime there is an incident involving a new behavior of concern, an incident report should be completed, regardless of the intervention used by the staff to address it. In terms of following up on the incident, management must be aware of every incident and a review must be completed that outlines strategies to address future incidents that are likely to reoccur. Incident review is time-sensitive. Timelines for the submission of the incident report by staff, as well as the review of the incident by management, must occur in a timely manner and outlined in policy. Regardless of whether staff work with individuals with identified behaviors, all staff must take some form of nonviolent crisis intervention training that meets industry standards. While there are some identified training, contact your accreditation coordinator if you are not sure if the training you are offering meets the industry standard. Training for unanticipated situations or behaviors of concern helps staff to be prepared to deal with situations when and if new behaviors develop. Again, as mentioned earlier, as individuals age, new behaviors may emerge, and it is important for staff to be trained and know what to do when or if that occurs. I am now going to take the next few minutes to walk you through the requirements for anticipated situations or behaviors of concern. A risk assessment is the first step after a new behavior has been identified or a current behavior changes. This does not mean that as soon as the behavior happens, a risk assessment is needed, although that might be necessary depending on the behavior. The service provider would need to follow their policy around this. For example, if policy states that after 2 incidents within 6 months, you would start a behavior plan process, the first step of the behavior plan process is to complete a risk assessment. A risk assessment needs to evaluate the degree of potential hurt, harm, or loss to the individual or others. It may also consider property damage. It should also evaluate the likelihood of an individual engaging in the behavior of concern again. Some form of risk assessment should be done when an individual is new to a service or program, when in transition and/or when exhibiting a new behavior of concern. For more information on this topic, please watch the Risk Assessment versus Risk Management webinar developed by ACDS. After a risk assessment has been completed, the next step is to complete a functional assessment. This is broader and looks at the behavior by defining potential reasons for the behavior and establishes antecedents for the behavior. It will also define the behavior's purpose or reason for doing the behavior. A functional assessment should include a completed medical assessment, a completed communication assessment, and a completed environmental assessment. It should also include a review of past history and previous strategies used. It should also be completed in conjunction with relevant professionals such as therapists, doctors, etc. Once a formal assessment is complete, a plan can be developed. The components are outlined in the CET standards under Standard 31 for planned positive procedures and Standard 32 for planned restrictive procedures. Whenever possible, positive procedures must be tried first prior to implementing restrictive procedures. Risk and functional assessment should be available to staff to review if needed. In addition, the summary of the risk and functional assessment should be included in the behavior plan as reference. When determining whether a behavior requires a plan, consider the intent around the documentation. For example, there are organizations who have developed a document that helps identify how to make an individual's day better. If this document is to address a specific or identified behavior of concern, then it requires a formal behavior plan. However, if it is just a list of helpful tips to help the individual not be stressed out or to be happier throughout the day, it may be a tip sheet that is kept on the individual's file instead. A formal plan requires data collection, whereas a tip sheet does not. A review committee must review any procedures before they are implemented. This is both for positive and restrictive procedure plans. Once a planned positive procedure is implemented, regular review by the committee is not necessarily needed. If there is a planned restrictive procedure in place, regular review by the committee with external representation is necessary. Staff training in regards to anticipated situations or behaviors of concern is twofold. There needs to be training around general skills and policy information for the use of both positive and restrictive procedures. This must meet industry standards. Best practice is that all staff take this training. This training might be positive behavior supports or some equivalent of that. The second part of the training is specific to the behavior plan that is in place. Only staff that work with individuals with behavior plans in place need to have this training. Thank you for taking time to watch this webinar today. I hope you have gotten some good information about situations or behaviors of concern and how to apply this information to your organization. If you have further questions, please do not hesitate to contact ACDS. Thank you and good luck as you prepare for CET.